Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. So first of all, thank you very much because I hit 5,000 subscribers on YouTube a little while back, which is kind of crazy. So thank you all for, I'm glad you all enjoy listening to my ramblings. So I really appreciate all the kindness and support either from YouTube or from Patreon. I really appreciate it. Y'all don't have to do it, but you all are amazing for doing it. So I enjoy talking about anime and manga and Danmai and Donghua with you all, and so I hope that I can continue on doing that for 5,000 more subscribers and wherever that may lead me. So I usually do for each milestone on subscribers on YouTube like a little special something, and so I thought I've wanted to react to an anime movie for a while now, but I just couldn't decide what I wanted to watch. There's several movies that I want to watch, so I did a poll on Patreon, and by and large, y'all really want me to see Your Name. Y'all really want me to see this movie. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. I've heard about it for a while. I don't know what it's about at all. It's called Your Name. Maybe it has something to do with soulmates. I don't know. So I've just heard about it. I was like, maybe I'll watch it one day, and here we are. So I do want to give a special shout out before we start this reaction though to Autumn V1204. Thank you, because they asked if I wanted to get a file of this movie to watch with some better translated subtitles, and I was like, oh, absolutely! If there's something with a better translated subtitles with it, I'll gladly take it. So, and plus, my internet kind of sucks, so this way it doesn't have to buffer or anything, it just plays all the way through. I'm like, awesome, thank you. So thank you, Autumn. That was very kind of you, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, so for this 5,000 subscriber thing on YouTube, I'm going to be watching Your Name. I know nothing about it, but I'm really excited. There's always like a positive and negative with standalone movies, because on the one hand, it's a standalone movie. You can watch it and get the whole story. It's complete. But on the other hand, I feel like once you watch an anime movie, you want there to be like a series about it. So that's the only downside, right? But I'm pretty excited. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to watch and find out. And then afterwards, I'll pull the movie back up and take the sound off and talk about it as I walk through it with y'all. So I'm not going to take notes. I've got it here on a file, so I'm just going to be able to rewatch it when we talk about it in the discussion. But yeah, I guess it's romantic maybe. I've needed some romance in my anime for quite some time because there's not been a lot of it lately, so I'm having withdrawals. So I say that. I'm watching Heaven Official's Blessing right now, and it's got some romance. Maybe. So let's not waste any more time. We're going to start Your Name and see what all the hubbub is about. We're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh. Y'all, my heart is like beating so fast. You all, there were some people that were describing Your Name. They're like, oh, it's my comfort movie. I'm like, your comfort movie? That was a really good movie, but I don't know. I was so anxious the whole time. I'll be honest, movies like that, where it's the time travel and it's the, not necessarily the time travel, but it's that we've got to correct the timeline, or it's like that will they, won't they, like the missed opportunities. Those movies stress me out beyond all belief. And y'all, I had no clue what I was walking into with this movie. I had no idea what I was walking into. And the moment I realized it was going to be one of those movies, I'm like, oh, my stress level is going to rise through the roof. I mean, oh man, I was tearing up. That got me. Like when he wrote I love you on her hand. Oh, I wanted them. I was so afraid when we first found out the thing that happened to Itamori about the city happening 3 years ago. I was so afraid that it was going to be one of those stories where it was going to have a sad ending and he was going to realize that no, it was just a misconnection. But we'll talk about the time thing and everything and the chords, but that it was a misconnection. And I thought it was going to be one of those things where he had to move on with his life and never see her again. And I was like, y'all say this is comforting? I was like, no. And then I thought, oh God, well they're going to try, because I won't spoil Link Click for you, but you should watch Link Click. It's a donghua. It's great. But there's a similar storyline that happens in it. And I was like, is this gonna be like that? And I was like, that made me tear up. That series made me cry. So I'm like, is this going to too? But God, this movie was so beautiful. And just the idea, the overarching idea of how we are all connected, and how we're all connected, and how like one little, the concept of this movie fascinates me a lot. It's something I really, really am fascinated about in real life. And I'm going to try not to cry, but I was just like, oh, it definitely like was soul touching. Like it was soul touching. And I think that God, to have a connection like Taki and Mitsuha have, to have a connection like they have, and it carry on throughout this movie, and then to 5 years afterwards, and him constantly feeling like it's that feeling of that sense of deja vu, like when you're dreaming, like when you see something, because I feel like a lot of the concepts of this movie are things that we all can somewhat relate to, or it's a concept that's so beautiful. And I love how this movie, it was so confusing at first, because the movie is meant to do that. It confuses you at first because it sets everything up full circle from the very beginning, from the opening shot of that comet splitting apart. It sets everything up, and going back through this now, the thing of it going beneath the clouds, like it sets everything up for you from the very beginning, and then it walks you back through as it re-explains everything and connects everything. And God, it's so gorgeous. But oh my gosh. And just, I wanted to go back and see these opening few minutes just to see how everything connected. And the town with the lake that we go to, we have all of that. Only the power is on in this. And so, and the lines about waking up in the morning and find myself crying, because it's these two characters who have missed this connection, but they're tied together through time and space. And at the very beginning, I can never remember the dream I must have had. And they're both crying, and it's then the sensation that I've lost something lingers for a long time after I wake up. And we see her like in her home and everything with the ribbon that she had that he gave back to her. And then it's from them. It all comes full circle, right? Oh my gosh. It reminded me of Paperman, the little short there, which I think came out around the same time, for something or someone that I don't know. I think I know when this feeling possessed me. One day comes to mind, and it's the day that the comet split apart, the stars came falling, and we see it all come like a scene from a dream. And yeah, and we see it, but in the time we see it there, it's before he comes and helps her. A beautiful view. Oh my gosh. But that idea, I love the idea that, you know, it carries on to a lot of feelings that we have. Like if you've ever have a sense of deja vu, which I get a lot. I feel so often. I'll see like things on a screen, or I'll see like moments that happen, and I'm like, this has already happened. Like I feel like we all have that feeling that that things have already happened, or you're like, did I dream this? And so I love this movie kind of carrying on that feeling, but not only carrying on that feeling, but connecting it to the concept of the bonds that we have with people, that the relationships. I'm gonna try not to cry, but it's so good. And then seeing them all like through time and space, like in this little opening, and it carrying, and them knowing each other and learning about each other, like from high school, and that red ribbon and her hair being cut short, and it all just connecting them together, that red string of fate, and them looking for each other. Oh my gosh, like it's just it's so good. And just that concept of the threads. And God, even the opening here, it all ties together, everything for the movie. Like it all just strings together, and that's the point, the stringiness of it. The idea of these threads in our lives and people that we meet. And so good. Try not to cry, damn it. And see all of them like together. And we saw, it just gave away the ending of them being together. This whole thing was just a big tease of them getting together, and it just, but you forget, right? But you forget the movie is long enough, and so much stuff happens throughout this that you do forget this opening. You forget it. And then when you go back and rewatch, you're like, oh my God, it was there all along. Just like how the characters in this all along were together. Oh, it's like soul touching. But yeah. Oh. Just a hot mess after this movie. Just a hot mess. But yeah, I love the idea that it just connects about how like uh, about just like people that you know and that you may see like once and then they come back in your life later, or maybe they don't. And like just the trajectory of people, it's so good. I love that they kept like going back and forth in time and trying to connect to one another, and it's so good. But just that concept of I gotta get it together, girl. But just that concept of meeting people, and then sometimes you meet people when you're young and you encounter them again and you're like, wow, what are the odds, and the coincidence of that, and just the coincidence of that, and just the odds of it, and meeting people and seeing the trajectory that they have in your lives, and how even if you meet somebody one time, like not knowing what that experience is going to tie back to, and not knowing what that experience, how that's going to affect others and how that's going to affect their lives, like just I'm a big fan of the idea that you're I'm a big fan of the idea that what you do and who you meet and all of your encounters, that they have purpose and meaning, and that they can impact people in ways that you can't even fathom, like in the moment, right? Like that's just, it's great, right? So I'm a big fan of that, like the whole It's a Wonderful Life, like everybody's meaning has purpose, and that you can't really see how many lives you're going to impact until you don't know, right? But you do impact people's lives throughout your own existence. So, God, this movie made me a mess. But it's just so good. I'm going to keep saying that throughout this whole discussion of how great this movie is. But just, I love the idea that the grandmother, tying it to this spirituality and the chords and the Mitsubi, that everything is connected, like the chords, everything through time and space, like your experience, everything, the who you meet and everything, they're all connected. And this movie does such a great job of showing both Taki and Mitsuha's lives. We really focus more on her life than his, but her life is connected directly to the comet, and she's the one that he loves. But it's just this idea that it was fate, the red string of fate. These two were destined to meet and destined to be together, and the idea that their love essentially changed time. Their love changed the timeline. His love for her and his dedication and perseverance to finding her and knowing her, it led to saving that town, and that he didn't give up even at the cost of him forgetting her. And God, when they kept forgetting each other, I was like getting so stressed. I was like, stop forgetting each other. But that's just how this movie is. It makes you forget. And then you remember as it goes. It's like memory is the weirdest thing, right? And just, But just the animation of this movie was gorgeous. I love they set everything up. The thing with Tessie and her at the end, them getting married, of course, and him just being like, wow, they seem familiar. I was like, know who it is. And then knowing that, I wonder if they see each other. Like, I wondered if Mitsuha saw Tessie and her and them later on once they got out of the town, because they couldn't live there anymore because it was destroyed, right? Oh. But them all like growing up and talking to his friends, like showing 5 years later, and them having like going to jobs. And I love just we don't get to see what her thing is. We don't get to see what she does. In the end, she has a little star necklace, like the piece of the comet, but we don't get to see what her profession is. We see that he wants to do something with architecture. And I think that's so cool how the movie, throughout the entirety of the movie, it sets up that he loves like architecture and drawing and connecting all of that. And it ends up being like that dedication to that position that he's pursuing. It just, this whole movie sets that up, and it shows how knowing her and looking and wanting to be with her like kind of furthered that passion that he had. It's so good. I'm like, oh. And this movie, in less than 2 hours, this movie's only an hour and 45 minutes. It felt longer than a lot of movies I've seen that have been longer, because there's so much happening in it. There's so much character development, everything that you get throughout it. Like even the school kids that like bully her because she's the mayor's daughter, and everything connects back together. You find out that the dad's estranged from her and the grandma and her sister, that that the one boy Teshi is like, his dad's like one of the constituents working with the dad that's the mayor. Like, it's just, there's so much in Tasakari, like the idea of what is in the gloom, the gloaming, and that this everything ties together. The idea of the witching hour. Twilight says on the board, the witching hour, neither day nor dusk, when the world blurs and you might encounter something not quite human. Oh, I love that. And it says, who's that in the gloom? Like, it all ties to like the spirituality and to like the different elements of Japanese culture, like with the grandma. Like, it all ties together. Like, everything in the background, get like Evangelion vibes from like the background, telling you things that you should probably be paying attention to the whole time. But the idea that they kept on asking who each other were, and every time they woke up from their dream, they slowly forgot what they... It's just like if you try to remember a dream and over time you forget about it, unless you write it down, you can't. But God, when his phone erased all of her journal entries, I was like, oh my God. And you find out the twist that she died supposedly 3 years ago. And he's like, no, we're going to traject time and space and stop this. It's like, ah. But everything with her grandmother's like spirituality and their culture, it all ties together. It's so good. But like the thing with the comet being overhead, like talking about that and making the crater to begin with. And just like the friendship, everything. It's the friendships in this film are so natural and they feel so lived in. Like, you instantly connect with these characters and you instantly relate to them, and they feel like they've been friends forever. And the chemistry between the characters and the animation and everything, it's so wonderful and it's so natural, and you just instantly connect with it. But God, and so I love that over time they built the cafe over time. Like, the friendships and everything, like them swapping back and forth in the bodies. It's such a great concept on the Freaky Friday concept that it happens like once or twice a week for a while. It keeps happening. And I like that we tie to the whole idea, Yatsuha and Mitsuha, they tie to the threads. Listen to the thread's voice. When you keep twining like that, the emotions will start running between you and the thread. And those emotions getting embedded in the thread that she gave to him. And it was like, that was like the lifeline. Her giving him the hair tie was the lifeline between them that connected them together. And that was what let her presence go through all of this time and space to go back to him and to help him connect, to save her and her family. Oh, and they talk about the records going up in smoke in the fire, and that's what people call the fire of Miyugoro. Yeah, so I like the idea of this. The idea, we're going to talk about this, where the grandma says, the meaning of our festivals was lost to time, and only the form lived on. And that ties to the meaning of those swapped days where they swap bodies. The meaning of all of that is lost to time because their memories fade, but the form lives on. They know there's something there. There's a presence there. They can't explain it, but there's something there, and they keep pursuing it, trying to figure out what it is. And it connects back to what the grandmother is saying. But even not knowing, tradition should still be handed down. Like, it's the idea of, you may forget why something happened or the exact moment it started, but it has a meaning and an importance, and that's why you pass it down. That's why you tell those stories. That's why you share stories with your family and things like that. It's like, oh, it's so good. I'm gonna quit saying that phrase, but that's just God, the Miyamizu Shrine. That's our solemn duty. And so the Miyamizu, it's been passed down. That's their family name. And she's like, the grandmother has the little red ribbon. So I got the impression from the father at the very end when she had the ribbon in her hair and he was like, who are you? I got the impression that, because the grandmother suggests that it's something that's passed down in their family over time, this like spiritual, supernatural connection that they have with people who I'm assuming end up becoming their spouses. And so when the dad looks at her at the end, right before the meteor comes down the second time around, when she's trying to convince him and she has the hair tie, I feel like in that moment he realized what was going on, and he's like, oh, this is how you've connected with somebody. And I feel like he connected with her mom in a similar manner a generation before, and he just, after she died, he lost his way and just couldn't deal with it anymore. Almost like the memories of her faded, right? So I wondered if the dad went through the same thing, that once she passed, he just, that connection was severed and he distanced himself from it. He did the exact opposite of Taki. He didn't pursue it. He just let it fade away and forgot about it until his daughter reminded him right in time for them to evacuate the city. I'm like, oh, oh my gosh. But I love it. And the ritual, everything, like, and you understand, like, the school friends making fun of her because it's something that seems so outdated, and it seems outdated and just, you know, something that seems silly to them, but to them it's tied to their family and their culture, and it's important. And oh my gosh, I also love that Teshi and the one girl, it seemed like for a moment Teshi had a crush on Mitsuha, and for a moment Okurita, she had a crush on Taki, but then they both kind of realized that no, that wasn't going to work, and they end up getting married and having their own lives, leaving Taki and Mitsuha. I'm really glad that happened, because for a second I thought that Taki was going to move on, that she really was going to die and he was going to move on with the other girl, and I was like, that's great, but I don't want that. I wanted them to end up together, and then they do, and there's the whole thing with the sake, the special sake, where they have the rice, right? They do the ritual and they put it in the glasses, and they each take a bite of it, right? And they say it's the oldest sake in the world. If you chew on rice, spit it out, and let it ferment, it becomes alcohol. It's kuchi kamasake. And the gods really appreciate sake made that way. And that's such a cool thing, where it ties to her, Mitsuha, it ties to her making the sake. And then there's that spirituality angle of it, where he goes to the shrine and drinks it because it's the half of her, and he has the other half through the threads, and that sake and everything connects them together. Like, it's, oh, I'm so glad the time travel thing works out. I'm so glad that the butterfly effect didn't kick in and it ends up being okay. I love it. But God, this whole film, just showing them together and them and their friends and just how their lives are so different. The one guy was such a jerk. The guy that cut her skirt. I'm really glad he just cut her skirt. I was like, this guy with a box cutter in a restaurant. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm glad he just cut her skirt to embarrass her. I was like, I thought it was going to get a little bit more violent there for a minute. I was like, if that's where we're going. But like Taki having the slap on the face and stuff, like you can just tell how his character, like both of their characters sort of change throughout the movie, because she starts out resenting growing up in that small town, and it was so relatable, the whole small town thing. I could relate so hard when they're like, we don't have a dentist, we don't have a bank, we don't have this, but we have 2 bars. I was like, oh my God, that was the whole thing where they were describing the little town Itamori. I'm like, that's my hometown. That's literally describing it. I'm glad across the pond and across the ocean in Japan, thousands of miles away, there are the exact same situations happening there as there are here. Glad that's the case. I'm glad that we've gone, crossed cultures to show how similar we all are, right? But I love that over time, how she goes from being like a really apathetic girl who doesn't care about her hometown at all to being someone that wants to save it. Like, she goes from being someone that she's like, I hate my life, I hate this town, I can't wait to get out of here, to being someone that wants to actively save her town and save her people. And he goes from somebody that's like quick to anger, like short fused, and seems like he doesn't really, he clearly is organized and has all, but he just, it's, I guess for Taki, it's not necessarily, it's more of his attitude than like his ambitions or his career, because he seems like he has everything lined out of what he wants to do, but his passion for her and his love for her kind of keeps him going on. He wants like to create cities that have this design and stuff that connect people together, and he uses her to like inspire him, and it's just so good. But yeah, just this whole movie felt so lived in and wonderful. And I love just all the humor, the banter, everything. It honestly takes a little bit to warm up to, because at the start I was like, okay, this seems like there's so much happening at the beginning. I'm like, man, we're like 10 minutes into this. Where's this going? And then And then when you find out, like, the whole shrine and everything, when he decides, I mean, he has the date with the one girl, and you feel like Mitsuha is sad because she set him up on the date, but she's crying about it, and it's almost like the red string of fate is like making them cry, because it's like, why are you trying to set him up with this girl he's clearly not meant to be with? He's meant to be with you, right? And the way that they did the call, the phone's not working, makes so much sense. Because like, oh, you have her number, just call her. You guys are in different towns, but you can call and meet up. No, they can't, because it's totally different times. She's going from 3 years ago to the present, and vice versa. They can't talk to each other on the phone because her phone doesn't exist in that timeline. It's like, oh my God, like, it all makes sense. And then the bombshell that it's been 3 years, and then them like finding out that there was a catastrophic damage, death toll unknown. And then I got the impression that the one friend, I guess he doesn't end up with her. I got the impression that she was going to end up with him, Tsukasa, but I guess that doesn't end up happening. But yeah, he says he's just delusional, but it's like, no. You want him to go save her, and he ends up going to the shrine. And then as he falls backwards and bangs his head, like, just the imagery of everything, like time turning and the time travel part and him trying to connect to her, it's so good. And they form the plan to do the bomb and everything. And I love that Teshi and the one girl say you are on board with it. And it's like, you know, the plan's not going to go right. You know the plan's not going to go right. And it's so frustrating, because you know that it's going to get messed up, and it seems like it's going to work, and then it doesn't, and it all works out in the end. Oh my gosh. I want to go back through the movie now and just like reread all the stuff in like all the stuff that's with their dates and everything. I want to go back and reread it just to connect to it and see what all was in there. And then there was a time where she goes to Tokyo and met him and gave him the hair ribbon, and that's what connected them. They connected back through time and space. And then, God, when they're up on top of that crater, chasing each other around, I'm like, if they don't connect, I'm going to be so mad. And the thing about this movie is that they never kiss in it. They never hug. They write their names. It's like, but it's so romantic in the, like, most unlikely way, shape, or form possible. It's like, it's soulmates level. It's like when you get to those series where they're literal soulmates, it's like you don't have to have the kissing and all that. It's like you don't need that. There's it's more to it than that. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh, I loved it. I loved the scene, and it ties back, and he gave her back the hair ribbon and everything. When she dropped the pen and couldn't write his name down, oh my God. And he didn't write his name either. He wrote, I love you. That part, from there on, I was mush. From there on, I was mush. I'm like, I just hope that this works out. And then the fact that the evacuation, like, it nearly doesn't work. And there's a whole scene, like if she falls down and ends up waking up, and they end up saving the town. Oh my gosh. And then it cuts to 5 years later, and he questions, why was I so obsessed? And he can't remember why they came back to Tokyo, and his friends don't really remember either. He's like, I spent the night alone on some mountain. That's all I remember. It's like, oh God. I just felt so bad. He's like, I had a weird obsession with the events surrounding that comet. And then the moment they find out that they're all safe, half a comet destroyed a town in that disaster. But miraculously, almost all the residents were unhurt. Oh. The entire town happened to be holding an emergency drill. And so they say unprecedented natural disaster, and they say residents safe, disaster foretold, mystery for the ages, and what do they say there? Amidst the mayor's hidden agenda, like what? Like just connecting all that together. God, what caught my interest is now a mystery to me. And it's just crazy how memory works. And it's so true to life. Like sometimes we look back on things and we're like, why was I obsessed with that? And why did I care about that? And it just, oh gosh, you guys, my stress was so big in this at the time. And I was like, why are y'all making me watch this? It's like crushing my soul. But then it all works out in the end. And then them under that bridge, I was like, ugh. When they didn't connect at that bridge, I was like, damn it. I was like, if they don't see one another. But then at the end, they do. He's like, I feel like I know you. And she's like, I thought so too. And it's such a, God, it's such a commentary about like, not only like the spirituality of it and the idea of the chords connecting us through time and space and how our bonds with people. And it's so funny. It's like, you know, that whole small world syndrome where you're like, wow, small world. How do I know them? Like there's just, and if you believe in fate and all of that and just how you know somebody that knows somebody and it connects us all together. But I love that idea of at the end of it, it's like taking a chance and making the most of a moment and taking a risk, because for a second you think that they're going to walk past each other and be like, no, that can't be. But then he takes that chance. Taki takes that chance and he's like, well, I want to talk to you. He's like, hey, I feel like I've met you somewhere. And then she's like, me too. I thought so too. And it's like just taking that chance and that opportunity and just saying, screw it, go for it. Ugh. It's so wonderful. I love it so much. I'm so glad at the end, even though they finally get together at the very end and say, hey, what's your name? Roll credits. Roll credits. It was so great. It was so wonderful. There's so many moments in this movie that were absolutely beautiful. And just the idea of them, like the Freaky Friday moment where they you know, switch body parts and they're checking, they're like, am I a man, am I a woman, you know? To be fair, they got a little bit more, way more with the girl than the guy, but you know, that's kind of the nature with a lot of movies, right? But yeah, just the idea. I love that moment where he's in the art gallery and he's looking, they're at the art gallery and he's looking at the pictures of the town, and it's like he connects in that moment, just little things, right? Oh my gosh. And so I wanted to see back on the little things if we got with their date, if there are little things hidden in the text messages. I didn't get to see all of them. And so them figuring out when they're in each other's bodies, Mitsuha at random, every few times, every week. And yeah, it's just like fate. The trigger, sleep. The cause, unknown. Sleep, why it happens. I love it. I love all these things where they're trying to connect. And there were so many things in the margins I was trying to read. And then there's the one girl telling him that he did that. And he's like, oh, it's not me. I'm sorry. And they're like, oh, come on. And then looking at the journal entries, it's like absolutely prohibited. So, okay, so the ways they keep their lives intact, they're like, no baths, no touching, keep your legs together, don't touch guys, don't touch girls. I love this, don't waste money, no. I like her thing is like, don't touch guys, don't, you know, fondle me in the bath, don't do that. And her things to him are like, don't waste money, don't be late, don't talk like a girl. His thing is like, don't, what do you say there at the end there? Like, he's more worried about her, like, messing up his relationship with his friends. Oh my gosh. It's so good. Oh, but then like making those journal entries to each other and just reading them back and forth. And them slowly getting to know each other through these memories over time. And it's so good. And you see them and their friends like over time and how it changes and everything. And then everything comes full circle at the very end. Them waking up. It was all leading back from the beginning to that moment of them getting ready that day and then them meeting each other. Wow, I really like this movie. I really, really, really liked this movie a lot. It was so good. I think so good is the phrase that describes it the best. Oh man, it really makes you just want to like be inspired to like not take it to like not waste any moments, you know, because you never know, right? And to make those connections, right? It's so inspiring. It makes you want to like just not waste any time on making those connections, you know? Oh, I'm so glad y'all voted for this and had me watch it. I really am. I think I would have watched it eventually, but I'm glad I'm glad y'all convinced me to watch it because this was a wonderful experience. I really, really enjoyed it. But yeah. So, thank you all. I'm glad I cried and did all that. But I really am thankful for your all support. Thank you guys so much for all the subscribers and for recommending this movie. I think when I get my next subscriber goal, I'll watch another movie and we'll go from there. So we'll see, right? But I thank you guys so much for the kindness, the support, the comments, everything. You all are amazing and wonderful people. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below and talk to you all about this movie and gush about it some more. But in the meantime, I'll be back very soon with more reactions. Bye.